terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America, welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Dumbmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. It's no secret that the Israel-Hamas war has exposed a significant rift within the Democratic Party. On the far left, you have progressives gravitating to pro-Palestinian causes, protests, marches. After all, that's what they do. But the mainstream of thought, led by the Biden administration, remains steadfastly loyal to Israel, the only democracy in the region, because they were the ones that were attacked and are now defending themselves, as is their right. But for some progressives, like Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal from Washington, joining the pro-Palestinian cause has resulted in the abandonment of other progressive positions of the past, including the Me Too movement. We're going to get to all this in the video, but before we do, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows, and if you like what you see and hear in this or any other video on the channel, smash that thumbs up button, like, comment, share the show with your friends, because all of that feeds the YouTube algorithm.
Feed me, Seymour.
Thanks so much for all that you guys have been doing in getting the word out about the show, sharing it out there. We're getting a much broader audience. A lot more people are learning about the show, and it's all because of you guys. Thank you so much for everything that you do to support the channel. What we're going to be talking about today is an interview where Congresswoman Jayapal appeared on CNN to sort of morally equivocate between Hamas's atrocities towards women and Israel's response to Hamas attacking them. We'll look at that in the context of the reaction from fellow Democrats, as well as from the left-wing media. And then we're going to go back in time all the way to 2018, when Congresswoman Jayapal was front and center on the Me Too movement to expose her hypocrisy in transitioning from one progressive cause and then abandoning it for the new hotness. Let's get into the interview right now.
It's kind of remarkable that this issue hasn't gotten enough attention globally. Widespread use of rape, brutal rape, sexual violence against Israeli women by Hamas. I've seen a lot of progressive women, generally speaking, they're quick to defend women's rights and speak out against using rape as a weapon of war, but downright silent on what we saw on October 7th and what might be happening inside Gaza right now to the.
Great question by Dana Bash of CNN. She may be referring to every progressive back in 2018 being a part of the Me Too movement, the movement to believe all women who claim to have been sexually assaulted by some person either in power or maybe not in power, just to believe all women when they make a claim of sexual abuse. So where are those calls today when there are claims of sexual abuse occurring in Israel perpetrated by a terrorist organization? I guess that's basically the gist of the question here. Let's listen to the answer.
These hostages. Why is that?
I mean, I don't know that that's true. I think we always talk about the impact of war on women in particular. In fact, I remember 20 years ago, I did a petition around the war in Iraq.
Have you said,
saying
have
that,
you talked about it since October 7th?
So here is Congresswoman Jayapal basically putting forth her past bona fides, her background in speaking out on behalf of women. And you know what? I'll agree with her. She has been vocal. She was vocal in the Me Too movement as well. So I don't think there's any disputing that.
And I've condemned what Hamas has done. I've condemned
Specifically
all
against
of
women?
the actions. Absolutely. The rape, of course. But
Oh, there's that dreaded word, but. You know, one thing I learned as an advocate practicing law in the People's Republic of New York City is that everything before the word but really doesn't matter, because that's all prologue. Now we're getting to what Congresswoman Jayapal really wants to talk about. She's already rejected the premise of the question from Dana Bash, and now she's going to plunge into her own point, and it's not going to be about Israeli women being abused and attacked.
I think we have to remember that Israel is a democracy. That is why they are a strong ally of ours. And if they do not comply with international humanitarian law, they are bringing themselves to a place that makes it much more difficult strategically for them to be able to build the kinds of allies, to keep public opinion with them. And frankly, morally, I think we cannot say that one war crime deserves another. That is not what international humanitarian law says.
Okay.
You see what she did there? She turned the question on its head. She used agenda gymnastics tactics to get to the point that she really wanted to talk about. Yes, Hamas is bad, but Israel, it's a whataboutism that to me is completely inexcusable. But Dana Bash is going to call her on her buffoonery.
With respect, I was just asking about the women, and you turned it back to Israel. I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and I think that rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think
there's another but word. This time it's however. Yes, war is hell, Hamas bad, this situation bad. However, I don't want to talk about that because, frankly, that's not going to please my base. Congresswoman Jayapal is very progressive. She is pro-Palestinian in her rhetoric. She needs to appeal to that base, and to appeal to that base, you must speak badly about Israel and disregard the atrocities of the terrorist organization Hamas, because that doesn't further your narrative. What furthers the narrative is villainizing the only democratic country in the region and putting aside anything bad about pro-Palestinian issues, Hamas, whatever it may be. This is the agenda, folks. And frankly, it's quite hypocritical when you think about Jayapal's Me Too background.
we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians.
So this I can't stand, this moral equivocation between a terrorist organization and Israel defending itself from this terrorist organization. It's completely different. The two things are different. One is attacking people and committing atrocities against civilians. The other is defending itself from those atrocities. And when you think about Israeli tactics, they do their best to clear out civilians from an area. Hamas, comparatively, uses civilians as human shields. Israel does all it can to engage Hamas, not the Palestinian people. Yet Jayapal is here trying to say that both are bad, both are equally bad because they both do bad things. I completely and fundamentally disagree.
15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping
well, Dana, I
Palestinian
think
women.
I don't want this to be the hierarchy of oppressions.
Right.
I think
Yes, you do. That's just what you did. You want it to be balanced and fair. You want the moral equivocation of Hamas, a terrorist organization, and Israel. You want a hierarchy of atrocities. You're just placing your thumb on the scale of this hierarchy. You want to talk about Israel and only Israel and avoid any negative conversations concerning Hamas, a terrorist organization. That's your agenda here. And you're doing it by sacrificing what you put forth as your past bona fides, your background in advocating for women. I guess you'll advocate for women if they're part of the sexy cause of the day. Back in 2018, the sexy cause was the Me Too movement, Brett Kavanaugh and all that.
Flashback.
I don't think it's a moment. I think it's a movement. I really do. I think it's different than a moment because a moment is forgotten easily. A movement sustains, builds infrastructure, and creates change. What we have to do is make a massive cultural shift in how we think about women and how we think about their place in the world. I think what we're trying to do is rectify centuries of a very different way of looking at women that placed women at the bottom of the ladder, women of color really at the bottom of the ladder, and we're trying to transform that. And so that means that it is
about individual women who come forward and we're able to make the case with those individual women that there's something wrong with the system, and the collective action that Me Too was about, but also that then we have to change entire institutions.
End of flashback.
But today, that's not the trendy cause. That's not trending on X. It's not in social media. It's not in the headlines. What's in the headlines for progressives is being pro-Palestinian at all costs. Credibility be damned.
15,000 people have been killed.
It shouldn't be, which is horrible.
And 2.2 million Palestinians live in a 140 square mile area, which is about the size of Las Vegas, with a population that is 4 times that of Las Vegas. And 1.8 million Palestinians right now are displaced. They are living in shelters. They are being told to move to South Gaza, then South Gaza is being bombed. They're being told to move to North Gaza. There are no homes left. The vast majority of infrastructure has been destroyed. This is not the way that we are going to beat terrorism.
So you see what she did here. She completely hijacked the interview from the subject matter that Dana Bash wanted to talk about. And she did that to deflect away from negativity that would affect the trendy cause of progressives these days. Now, Jayapal and progressives on this issue seem to be outside of the mainstream of Democratic thought, led by Joe Biden and his administration. Let's look at the reaction to Jayapal's comments from both the White House and the left-wing media. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show.
Can I get the White House's response to Congresswoman Jayapal's comments over the weekend? In her interview, she said sexual violence should be condemned, but that we have to be balanced in our condemnation. Was that an appropriate comment?
Look, so we've been very, very clear. You heard a little bit from Jake Sullivan about this. I can only speak for the president. That's who I can speak for. And we've been clear. What Hamas did is absolutely reprehensible, and full stop. We're going to continue to be clear about that. And when you think about, rape and the use of rape as being used as a weapon, that is also reprehensible. And that's full stop. And I'll just leave it there. And I'm speaking for the President of the United States. So I think I've been very clear on that.
Any comment, though, for Congresswoman Jayapal?
I just commented on it. I just laid out what we believe is unacceptable.
So this has been the MO of the Biden administration. We saw this with Rashida Tlaib's comments before when the White House was questioned about them. The White House will condemn the statements, but not condemn the person. They won't mention the member of Congress by name. They won't go after that person. Obviously, they want to keep a relationship with them because they need them to put forth their own agenda. Let's now see what MSDNC had to say in reaction to viewing the CNN interview with Jayapal.
I just can't. But we have to remember, she's asked about rape, and then she goes, but we have to remember. She's asked about Jews being savage, Jewish women being savage, and she goes, it happens. It happens in wartime. She's asked again about it, and she goes, yes, it's terrible, it's bad, I'm against it. However, acting as if nobody's talked about the civilian death toll in Gaza.
Did Joe Scarborough just listen to the previous segment? It's like he's echoing everything I'm saying. Welcome back to the party, Joe. Listen, I think common sense dictates a response that you're seeing from MSDNC. Sometimes common sense does leak into the rhetoric. It's surprising when you see it, but it does happen. A broken clock is right twice a day. And I'm glad to see Morning Joe dealing with Jayapal's comments in this manner. The equivocation between Hamas and Israel is completely unacceptable, and the whataboutism is an affront to anyone who takes sexual assault seriously. And we learned from the Me Too movement, progressives are supposed to be the ones taking sexual assault seriously in all forms. Believe all women. Remember that? That was the basis of the Me Too movement. Well, I guess now we don't believe all women, do we?
She can't just condemn Jewish women being brutalized and it being videotaped and people seeing it. She just can't. She can't. It's always a but. We have to remember, it happens in war. However, we have to remember.
I think right now it's a good time to revisit the past statements of Congresswoman Jayapal in the context of the Me Too movement from back in 2018 to expose the true hypocrisy of Jayapal jumping from progressive cause to progressive cause and abandoning prior positions for the sake of being relevant in the discussion to her base. So this is a tweet from Congresswoman Jayapal back from October of 2018 talking about the then sexy cause of the moment, the Me Too movement. The tweet says, "The hashtag Me Too movement is powerful and leaving some survivors' experiences behind. There is no justice until we empower all survivors and not just those in the public eye." Keyword being in caps, all survivors. That's what Jayapal was saying back in 2018. I want you to think about this. Leave me a comment. Let this be the topic of the day. Is Congresswoman Jayapal a hypocrite for not denouncing Hamas full-throatedly and equivocating between Hamas and Israel in light of her previous comments back in 2018 about believing all survivors? Or is she being completely consistent with this position? Let me know in the comments and we'll discuss it further. I also want to go back in time to 2018 to comments that Congresswoman Jayapal made in the context of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings concerning the Me Too movement. Listen to this as well.
The reality is this country has seen over and over again that women have been assaulted, that men deny those assaults until they can't. 72% of Americans believe that sexual assault in this country is real and a serious problem. So I think that this is a big problem for the Republicans, and I think that, you know, women across the country are watching this very closely. To have these senators and President Trump come out and essentially deem her guilty before she's even, you know, had a chance to have a fair investigation when we are talking about the highest court of the land, I think that's going to be unacceptable to Republican and Democratic women across this country. And I think Republicans better be very, very careful and think about what century they're living in.
Now, it's just my opinion, but that is a completely shifting of viewpoint from then to now. We're going from believe all survivors, believe all women, to, yes, sexual abuse is very bad, but look over here at this other atrocity, which is just as worse or even more atrocious than what you want to talk about. It's delegitimizing the struggle of women in Israel. It's lowering the level of respect for women in Israel comparatively to what she was saying back in 2018. To me, this is completely and utterly hypocritical. And frankly, this is what Congresswoman Jayapal is. She's a progressive hypocrite who cares more about jumping from the cause of the day to the next cause of the day without regard to the principles she held previously before adopting the new one. It's all about the new hotness with progressives. Whatever they're marching about, whatever's hip and trendy among the cool kids, you know, that's what it seems to be all about. And Congresswoman Jayapal is falling right into this, marginalizing Israeli women and sacrificing them at the altar of progressive politics. The Me Too movement is dead, and pro-Palestinian is the new Me Too. But hey, that's just my opinion. Leave me a comment about what you think. Is this all hypocrisy and agenda gymnastics from Congresswoman Jayapal, or is she remaining consistent to her prior positions? I want to talk about it in the comments with you, and please like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff, so we can keep having more conversations just like this one right here, talking about all the shenanigans and buffoonery that happens every day this week in Dumb-mocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.